So Fox said, we do not war with outward weapons. Our understanding of Jesus is he will not ask us to do outward weapons. He's not the kind of, we don't understand the Holy Spirit that one minute says, oh, be peaceful, and the next minute go out and kill a lot of people. We don't understand that kind of spirit. The spirit we experience is one that is consistent and wants us not to war with outward weapons. I'm George Lakey, Philadelphia Quaker. We're going through a paradigm change right now. And it's something I didn't know if I would ever live to see, because the paradigm that says when push comes to shove, you have to use violence is so tough, and it's been around for tens of thousands of years, right? It seems as obvious as the paradigm once was that the earth is flat. Everybody knows the earth is flat, right? And, well, not any longer. But that's how toughly inbuilt the paradigm is, that violence is what needs to be used when we're going to really exert power and do humanitarian interventions or anything we want to do. When it's tough, we have to use violence. But that's shifting now. Quakers understood it 350 years ago because it was what they felt naturally you do when the Spirit is in you, saying, love people and do what's right, and set up the conditions under which it's easier for people to do right and to stop oppressing each other. That the practical dimension of Quakers was expressed through nonviolent struggle. Struggle, mind you, struggle. Now, not everybody responds in that way, right? Some people say, well, spirituality means I should avoid struggle. But for early Quakers, the Spirit wanted us to go out and do struggle. And so Quakers would pick fights. Quakers would go into churches, for example, and after a preacher had preached something that they felt was really wrong, they would stand up and contradict the preacher, even though that meant that it was pretty likely they would be grabbed by the parishioners nearby and dragged out of the church and beaten up just outside the church. But they would do that. That's an example of nonviolent struggle. It's because, yes, we make war with inner weapons, and they even called themselves people who were struggling for the Lamb's War. They were fighting the Lamb's War. So this was a warrior outfit, these 17th century Quakers, who were fighting with nonviolent means. There's a new scholarly book that the political scientists, hard-boiled political scientists who wrote it, are getting enormous credit for, describes in ways that political scientists and hard-boiled realists, governance people are taking deeply seriously, because the book describes over 300 struggles in which regime change has been the issue, overthrowing governments or getting out from under an empire or stopping an occupation, big stuff. And in this book, they prove that the movements that chose nonviolent means to do this were twice as effective as the movements that chose violent means. Twice as effective. Now, to anyone who's pragmatic bent of mind, this is news. This is extremely important. So it's not only seeing the Egyptians overthrow Mubarak or seeing the Tunisians overthrow their dictator or the other kinds of recent experiences that we've seen, but it's also the scholarship, which is important in terms of idea formation, is beginning to catch up with this idea of nonviolent struggle. It's just believing that the earth is flat. You can't really hold it against people for believing the earth is flat. At a certain time in history, everybody knows the earth is flat. And at this time in history, most people just know that violence is the only way to do things when it's tough. However, the excitement for me is that there have been sufficient breakthroughs so that now an opening may exist. And maybe some adventurous person watching this will decide to open themselves to new possibilities.
Hello and welcome to the Quaker Speak project. We release videos every Thursday about all sorts of different aspects of Quaker spirituality. Click on the subscribe button above to follow along. You can watch last week's video about Quakers and silence here. and next week's video, when we post it, here. For a Friends Journal review of Why Civil Resistance Works, the book that George talked about in this video, click here. Quaker Speak is a project of Friends Journal. We work in collaboration with Friends General Conference and Quaker Voluntary Service. I'm the director of the project. My name is Jon Watts, and we'll see you next week.